A mother's fading light. Vivian Chen pressed her forehead against the cold hospital window. Watching rain streak down the glass like tears, she no longer had the energy to cry. Inside room 412, her mother lay connected to machines that beeped with mechanical indifference. Each sound marking another moment borrowed against time they could not afford. The doctors had been clear. Experimental treatment was available, but it came with a price tag that might as well have been written in distant and utterly unreachable. 20-8 years old, and Vivian had become an expert in impossible mathematics. She could calculate exactly how many double shifts she would need to work, how many meals she could skip, how many months it would take to gather even a fraction of what was needed. The answer was always the same. Too many, too late. She had sold everything that held value: her grandmother's jewelry, her father's watch collection, even her own car. Now she took 3 buses to reach the hospital, her body aching from cleaning houses during the day and waiting tables at night. An unexpected encounter. The Westbrook estate was her final client of the day. A sprawling mansion in the hills where she had worked for nearly 6 months without ever meeting the owner. Damien Westbrook was a ghost in his own home. A tech industry titan whose face appeared in business magazines but never in his own hallways. The household staff whispered about him: brilliant, ruthless, emotionally unavailable. A man who had built an empire but lived like a monk in a palace. That evening, exhausted and running on 4 hours of sleep, Vivian made a mistake. She knocked over a priceless sculpture while dusting the library. The crash echoed through the silent house like a gunshot. Her heart seized as she dropped to her knees, trying desperately to piece together the shattered porcelain. She was still there, hands trembling, when a voice cut through the silence. "Leave it." Vivian looked up to find Damien Westbrook standing in the doorway. He was younger than she expected, perhaps late 30s, with sharp features that might have been handsome if they were not so cold. His dark eyes assessed the situation with the same detached calculation he'd probably used for billion-dollar acquisitions. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Westbrook. I'll pay for it, I promise. You can take it from my wages, however long it takes." Her voice cracked with exhaustion and fear. He walked closer, his expensive shoes crunching on porcelain fragments. "That piece was worth $40,000. At your current wage, you would be paying me for the next decade." He paused, studying her with unsettling intensity. "But I have a different proposition." The unthinkable proposal. What followed was the strangest conversation of Vivian's life. Damien explained his situation with the emotional investment one might use to describe a weather forecast. His company was in the middle of crucial merger negotiations. The board of directors, traditional and conservative, had expressed concerns about his personal life, or rather, his complete lack of one. Investors wanted stability, family values, the appearance of a well-rounded leader. "I need a wife," he stated flatly. "Not a real marriage, but a convincing arrangement. 6 months. You would live here, attend essential public events, and maintain the appearance of a stable marriage. In return, I will pay all your mother's medical expenses, including the experimental treatment, and provide you with a substantial financial cushion for whatever comes after." Vivian stared at him, certain she had misheard. "You want me to pretend to be your wife? The role requires someone unknown, someone without connections to my industry or social circle, someone who needs the money enough to honor a strict confidentiality agreement." His gaze was steady, businesslike. "You fit the requirements." The words should have offended her. They should have sent her running from the mansion and never looking back. But all Vivian could think about was her mother's labored breathing, the way her hand felt lighter each time Vivian held it, as if she were already becoming something insubstantial. Signing away reality, the contract arrived within an hour, delivered by Damien's attorney, a stern woman who watched Vivian read every clause with hawk-like attention. The terms were extensive: separate living quarters, no physical intimacy, 5 mandatory public appearances, absolute confidentiality, and a clause that made her stomach twist: no emotional attachment. This was business, nothing more. Vivian's hands shook as she held the pen. Everything in her screamed that this was wrong, that she was selling something fundamental about herself, But then her phone buzzed with another message from the hospital billing department, and she remembered that dignity did not pay for life-saving treatment. She signed her name in careful script. Damien witnessed the signature without ceremony. "You'll move into the East Wing tomorrow. My assistant, Patricia, will coordinate everything. For the next 6 months, you are Mrs. Vivian Westbrook." He extended his hand for a formal handshake. When Vivian's fingers touched his hand, she felt a chill that had nothing to do with temperature. This was the moment her old life ended. She was stepping into a performance she had no script for, playing a role she did not understand, for an audience that would destroy her if they discovered the truth. As she left the mansion that night, Vivian looked back at the illuminated windows. Somewhere inside that beautiful prison, she would learn to be someone else. The question that haunted her all the way home was simple and terrifying. When the 6 months ended and the contract was torn up, would she remember who she had been before? The rain had stopped, but Vivian felt like she was drowning anyway. Becoming someone else, the morning sun had barely touched the horizon when Vivian woke in the East Wing bedroom. Momentarily disoriented by the silk sheets and the ceiling that seemed miles above her, reality crashed back. Immediately, she was no longer just Vivian Chen, the woman who scrubbed floors and counted pennies. She was now Mrs. Westbrook, at least on paper. Patricia Reed, Damien's executive assistant, arrived at 7 sharp with a leather portfolio and an expression that suggested she had seen everything and been impressed by none of it. She was a woman in her 50s with silver hair pulled into a perfect bun and eyes that missed nothing. "Mrs. Westbrook," Patricia began, and Vivian flinched at the title. "We have considerable work ahead. Your first public appearance is in 10 days at the Technology Innovation Summit. You will need to be ready." What followed was a transformation that felt more like an interrogation. A team of stylists descended upon her, measuring, analyzing, discussing her as if she were a mannequin rather than a person. They debated her bone structure, her coloring, her posture. Vivian stood silently, feeling herself being dismantled and rebuilt into someone who could stand beside Damien Westbrook without causing whispers. The etiquette coach, an imposing man named Gregory Laurent, drilled her relentlessly. "You do not fidget with your jewelry. You do not laugh too loudly. You make eye contact for exactly 3 seconds. Any less seems nervous. Any more seems aggressive. Your smile should reach your eyes but never overwhelm your composure." After 6 hours of training, Vivian's face ached from maintaining the perfect expression. Her feet throbbed from practicing in designer heels. Her mind spun with rules about which fork to use, how to hold a champagne glass, the proper way to enter a room beside a powerful man. An unexpected defender late that evening. Vivian stood in the mansion's vast kitchen, making herself tea with trembling hands. She had dismissed the chef's offer to prepare something, needing a moment alone with the simple, familiar ritual. The day had stripped away layers of her identity, leaving her feeling raw and exposed. "You looked exhausted." Damien's voice startled her. He stood in the doorway wearing casual clothes, jeans, and a simple black shirt, looking more human than she had ever seen him. "I am exhausted," Vivian admitted, "too tired for pretense. I spent all day learning how to be someone I'm not." Damien moved to the counter, surprising her by preparing his own coffee. "The performance is necessary. The board members, the investors, they are looking for any weakness, any excuse to question my judgment. And I'm your weakness." The words came out sharper than intended. He looked at her directly, something flickering in his dark eyes. "You are my strategic decision. There is a difference." Vivian set down her teacup with more force than necessary. "I'm a human being, Mr. Westbrook, not a chess piece. I agreed to this arrangement because I was desperate, but I won't be treated like I'm less than you." Silence stretched between them, tense and electric. Then, unexpectedly, Damien's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "You are right. That was unnecessarily cold." He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "This situation is unfamiliar territory for me. I am accustomed to transactions, not collaborations." It was the closest thing to an apology Vivian suspected she would ever receive from him. She studied his face, seeing for the first time the exhaustion he carried, the weight of maintaining an empire that never allowed him to show weakness. "Why did you really choose me?" she asked quietly. "The truth, not the business reasons." Damien was silent for a long moment, because when you thought you had broken something valuable, your first instinct was to fix it yourself, to take responsibility even when it would cost you everything. That kind of integrity is rare in my world. Actually, it is non-existent. The gala performance, the Technology Innovation Summit, arrived faster than Vivian was ready for. She stood before the mirror in a midnight blue gown that cost more than she used to make in 6 months. Barely recognizing the elegant woman staring back, her dark hair was swept into an intricate updo, her makeup subtle but transformative. She looked like she belonged in Damien's world, but feeling like she belonged was another matter entirely. Damien knocked once before entering, and his reaction was so subtle that anyone else might have missed a slight widening of his eyes, a pause in his breath. "You look perfect," he said simply. "I look terrified," Vivian corrected. "Then you are an excellent actress, because no one would know." He offered his arm. "Remember, we are partners in this. You are not alone." The ballroom was a glittering spectacle of wealth and power. Crystal chandeliers cast dancing light across designer gowns and tailored suits. Conversations hummed with the energy of deals being made and alliances being formed. Vivian felt every eye turn toward them as they entered. Damien's hand rested lightly on her back, steady and grounding. "Breathe," he murmured. "You belong here as much as anyone." They navigated through introductions and conversations, Vivian responding with the grace Gregory had drilled into her. She smiled at the right moments, laughed softly at appropriate jokes, and held herself with a poise that felt borrowed but looked genuine. Then Francesca Monroe approached, a woman dripping in diamonds and disdain. She had been photographed with Damien at various events years ago, and the proprietary look in her eyes suggested she had expected to eventually become Mrs. Westbrook herself. "Damien, darling," Francesca purred, pointedly ignoring Vivian. "What a surprise your sudden marriage was. So private, so rushed. One has to wonder about the circumstances." The implication hung in the air like poison. Vivian felt her composure crack, felt the old insecurities rising. She was about to excuse herself when Damien's hand moved from her back to her waist, pulling her closer. "Francesca," he said, his voice carrying the kind of cold authority that built empires, "allow me to clarify. My marriage to Vivian was neither rushed nor circumstantial. She is the most genuine person I have ever met, which is precisely why she stands beside me now. I suggest you remember that." Francesca's smile froze. Around them, conversations had quieted, people watching the exchange with fascinated attention. Damien had just publicly claimed Vivian in a way that went beyond their contract, defending her with a fierceness that surprised them both. "If you'll excuse us," Damien continued smoothly, guiding Vivian away. Her heart pounded as they moved toward the balcony, needing air. Once outside, beneath the stars and away from watching eyes, she turned to him. "You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did." His jaw was tight. "I will not allow anyone to disrespect you, contract or not." Vivian searched his face, seeing something she had not noticed before, genuine anger on her behalf, protective instinct that had nothing to do with business strategy. "Damien, what are we doing? This was supposed to be simple." He looked at her for a long moment, and in his eyes, she saw the same confusion she felt. "I do not know anymore," he admitted quietly. "But it stopped being simple the moment you signed that contract." The crack in the foundation the following weeks blurred into a strange new rhythm. Vivian attended events, managed interviews, and played her role flawlessly. But between the public performances, something else was happening. She and Damien began having breakfast together, not because the contract required it, but because they wanted to. They talked about books, about childhood memories, about fears they had never shared with anyone else. Vivian learned that Damien's emotional distance was not cruelty, but survival. He had been betrayed by someone he trusted completely, his former business partner and fiancé. who had stolen company secrets and nearly destroyed everything he had built. The experience had taught him that vulnerability was a weapon others would use against him. "So you built walls," Vivian said one evening as they shared wine in his study. "Walls keep you safe," he replied. "They also keep you alone." Something in his expression shifted, softened. "Not anymore." The words hung between them, weighted with meaning neither was ready to fully acknowledge. Vivian felt her heart race, knowing she was violating the most important clause in their contract, the one about emotional attachment. But as she sat there, watching moonlight cast shadows across Damien's face, she realized the truth she had been avoiding. This was no longer about the contract. This was no longer about her mother's treatment or his company's image. Something real was growing between them. Fragile and terrifying and undeniable. And in exactly 4 months, their arrangement would end. The contract would dissolve, and Vivian would be expected to walk away from the only man who had ever seen past her. Circumstances to the person beneath. Bath when secrets. Scandal broke on a Tuesday morning with the subtlety of an avalanche. Vivian was having coffee in the sunroom when Patricia rushed in. Her usual composure shattered. She handed Vivian a tablet without a word. And what Vivian saw made her stomach drop. The headlines screamed across the gossip site. Billionaire's marriage exposed as contract arrangement. Tech mogul Damien Westbrook allegedly pays housekeeper to play wife. The article contained details that should have been impossible to obtain. It mentioned the contract, the 6-month timeline, even quoted specific clauses. Photographs showed Vivian entering the mansion with cleaning supplies months before the wedding announcement. Screenshots of her mother's medical records appeared alongside speculation about the payment. Arrangement. Someone had leaked everything. Damien appeared moments later, his phone pressed to his ear, his expression darker than Vivian had ever seen. He ended the call abruptly when he saw her face. "Vivian, how did they get this information?" Her voice shook. "Who knew about the contract?" "Very few people. My attorney, Patricia, the board members who approved the arrangement." His jaw clenched. "Someone betrayed us." The tablet buzzed with incoming notifications. News outlets were picking up the story. Social media exploded with commentary. Within an hour, reporters gathered outside the mansion, gates like wolves, scenting blood. Vivian watched from the window, feeling her carefully constructed new life disintegrating. "I am ruining everything," she whispered. "Your company, your reputation, stop." Damien crossed the room in 3 strides, his hands gripping her shoulders. "You are not responsible for this. Someone is weaponizing you to hurt me. Then let me go." Tears burned her eyes. "Terminate the contract. Tell them it was all a mistake. I will disappear, and you can repair the damage." His grip tightened. "No, Damien, be logical. This is what you do. You make strategic decisions. I'm the liability. Cut me loose, Vivian." His voice dropped, raw with emotion she had never heard from him. "I am not letting you go." The board's ultimatum. The emergency board meeting was called for that afternoon. Vivian was not invited, but she watched the live stream from Damien's office, her heart in her throat. 15 board members sat around a massive conference table, their expressions ranging from anger to disappointment. Board Chairman Robert Thornton spoke first, his voice heavy with judgment. "Damien, this scandal is unacceptable. Stock prices are falling. Investors are demanding explanations. Your credibility is compromised." Another board member added, "You must dissolve this arrangement immediately and distance yourself from Miss Chen. Issue a statement that she acted alone. That you were deceived." Vivian felt sick. They wanted Damien to throw her to the wolves, to paint her as the villain, while he emerged as the victim. It was the smart play, the strategic move that would protect his empire. She waited for him to agree, to make the cold calculation she knew he was capable of. Instead, Damien stood, his presence commanding every eye in the room. "No," he said simply. The room erupted. Board members spoke over each other, voices rising in protest. Thornton pounded his gavel, demanding order. "Damien, you are not thinking clearly. I am thinking more clearly than I have in years. His voice cut through the chaos. You want me to sacrifice Vivian Chen to protect corporate interests? You want me to lie, to betray someone who has done nothing wrong, to prioritize profits over principles? He paused, his gaze sweeping the room. When did we become the kind of company that destroys innocent people to maintain appearances? When did integrity become negotiable? Thornton's face reddened. This is not about integrity. This is about survival. Then, we deserve to fail. Damien's words fell like stones. Vivian entered this arrangement because she was desperate to save her dying mother. I offered her a way out. Yes, the marriage was contractual. Yes, it served my purposes. But she fulfilled every obligation with grace and honesty, while I hid behind business justifications. He continued, his voice carrying conviction that silenced every objection. If anyone should face consequences, it is me. I manipulated the situation. I created the deception. Vivian was simply trying to survive in a world that gave her no other options. Damien Thornton said more quietly, defending her will not save your position. I know, but it will save my soul. The room fell silent. Vivian, watching from the office screen, felt tears streaming down her face. Damien was destroying his carefully constructed empire to protect her. The public declaration within an hour. Damien called a press conference. Reporters packed the conference room, cameras rolling, questions already forming. Vivian begged him not to do this, but he was immovable. She watched from the wings as he approached the podium, composed but resolved. I am here to address the reports about my marriage to Vivian Chen, he began. The reports are accurate. Our marriage began as a contractual arrangement designed to serve mutual interests. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Cameras flashed like lightning. However, Damien continued, the narrative being presented is fundamentally incomplete. Vivian Chen is not a gold digger or a social climber. She is a woman who worked 3 jobs to support her terminally ill mother. When I offered her this arrangement, it was not exploitation, it was a lifeline I provided because I had the power to help and she had the courage to accept. He paused, his expression softening in a way the public had never seen. What the contract could not predict was that spending time with someone genuinely good changes you. Vivian taught me that integrity matters more than image, that compassion is not weakness, and that the walls I built to protect myself were actually a prison. A reporter shouted a question, but Damien raised his hand. I am not finished. Whatever consequences I face for this situation, they are mine to bear. Vivian deserves privacy, respect, and the chance to live her life without being defined by my mistakes. If you must judge someone, judge me. He stepped away from the podium, ignoring the eruption of questions, and walked directly to where Vivian stood. What did you do? She breathed. What I should have done from the beginning. He reached into his jacket and pulled out their contract, now carried everywhere like a talisman. In front of cameras, reporters, and the watching world, he tore it in half. The sound of ripping paper seemed impossibly loud. No more contracts, he said. No more conditions. Vivian Chen, if you stay with me now, it will be because you choose to. Not because any document says you must. The choice later that night. They stood on the mansion's rooftop garden, the city lights sprawling beneath them like fallen stars. The scandal still raged. Damien's company stock had plummeted. Board members were calling for his resignation. Everything he had built was fracturing, yet he seemed strangely at peace. You destroyed your empire for me, Vivian said quietly. I rebuilt my humanity because of you. He turned to face her. The empire was hollow, successful, but soulless. You reminded me what actually matters. She shook her head, overwhelmed. Damien, I don't know how to be the person you need. I was a housekeeper 3 months ago. I don't belong in your world. You are right. His words made her heart sink until he continued. You do not belong in my world. My world is cold, calculating, and empty. But maybe we could build a different world together. One where contracts are not needed because trust is given freely. where success is measured in moments that matter rather than quarterly earnings. He took her hands, his grip warm and steady. I am not asking you to be Mrs. Westbrook, the performance. I am asking you to be Vivian, exactly as you are, and let me be Damien, learning to be human again because of you. Tears spilled down her cheeks. What if I cannot do this? What if I fail? Then we fail together, and we try again. His thumb brushed away her tears. Vivian Chen, will you stay? Not for money, not for contracts, but because you want to build something real with me. For a moment, she stood paralyzed by fear of inadequacy, fear of judgment, fear of a world that would always see her as the housekeeper who trapped a billionaire. Then she remembered standing in that hospital room, watching her mother breathe through machines, feeling utterly powerless. Damien had given her power, not just financial security, but the power to choose her own path. And now, she was choosing him, not because she needed to, but because somewhere between the contract signing and this moment, she had fallen completely, terrifyingly, in love. Yes, she whispered. I choose you. I choose us. He pulled her close, and when he kissed her, it was not the performance required by their arrangement. It was real, messy, imperfect, and absolutely genuine. 6 months later, the board eventually forced Damien to step down as CEO. But he had already prepared for that possibility. He started a new venture focused on ethical business practices, recruiting Vivian as his partner. Together, they built something smaller, but infinitely more meaningful than his previous empire. Vivian's mother received her treatment and slowly recovered, eventually moving into a comfortable apartment Vivian and Damien chose together. The scandal faded as new stories captured public attention. On their actual wedding day, private, attended only by people who genuinely loved them, Vivian stood beside Damien without contracts, without pretense, without fear. They exchanged vows they had written themselves, promises that meant everything because they were freely given. As they danced under simple string lights, Vivian whispered, "No more performances." Damien smiled, genuinely smiled, in a way his business associates would never have recognized. No more performances. Just us, choosing each other, every single day. And in that moment, standing in the arms of a man who had torn up a contract to build something real, Vivian finally understood that the greatest luxury was not wealth or status. It was the freedom to love and be loved without conditions, to be seen completely and accepted entirely. Their story had begun with desperation and ended with choice, the most powerful kind of transformation.